Hi everyone, this is Alex for FNC Poker, and today I'm going to show you how to crush recreational players, how to find some funky plays against them, and more importantly, how to throw GTO out the window and stop thinking about that strategy you learned yesterday when you play against this type of opponents. If you like my approach and if you want to learn more, not only about how to crush recreationals, but also about how to put theory into practice, how to use solvers, how to have a better mental game, make sure to check out our bootcamp. We recently launched this program, and in addition to a full day of training, interactive training on different subjects, we also provide a personalized one-on-one database review to find your own leaks. So if you're curious about that, make sure to check the link in the description and maybe join our Discord community for more details. That being said, let's get into the action. Okay, so before everything, I'm going to show you this hand that might seem quite funky that I played against this small blind yesterday. He's quite an atypical player profile. He's quite a big whale. Not sure if you like me saying that or not, but that's the reality. He is a whale. I want to play against him. I don't care. Cancel me. Do whatever. So yeah, very aggressive player. In the past hands, he seemed to slow down a little bit. He did take some 8 high to show down, which is not really typical of him, but I wouldn't read too much into that. I still categorize him as really aggressive, quite spazzy, and very importantly, super wide pre-flop. I think that's what is going to factor the most into our decision post-flop. So let's see how this hand actually went. We open cutoff, he calls the small blind, the board comes down 8, 5, 3, and we decide to go for a small c-bet. This is disputable. I think we can also check back and go for a bluff catch. This is basically a value bet, not a bluff or anything. And we do get check raise for quite a big size, which I'm not super happy to see, but on the other hand, if you look at this board, there are so many draws available, especially for a player that's quite wide. He's going to have more gut shots than a normal rag, maybe more open-enders if he's also calling some offsuit combos, which I wouldn't be surprised with. Ace-2, Ace-4 both make gut shots, so I think this is a very clear call against this type of opponent. The turn is a 3. I will let you think for yourself what this turn does to his range, and he decides to go for a pot size bet. At this point, I thought about it and I decided to get all the money in, 100 plus big blinds, and our opponent folds. Now, I'm going to open the solver and go a bit deeper into why I did this and why I did this and what my thought process was. So yeah, maybe before we look at it, think for yourself, maybe pause this video and leave a comment and let us know why do you think I shoved here, or if you find any reasons for this play, or even if you think this is a massive punt and you'd never do this, let us know. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is go into GTO Wizard AI and just pre-fill the solutions. This is NL 50 GG. It doesn't really matter that much for what I'm trying to show here, but let's take the GTO Wizard solution for what the cutoff versus small blind range should look like. Again, if you look here, small blind should be really tight. I don't think people really call queens and jacks and tens all that often, but that's not really the purpose of this video. Let's just leave it as the standard ranges. The board was 8, 5, 3 with no flush draw. And we see small blind is actually supposed to donk a lot. This is because small blind has a lot of connection around middle cards, right? With a normal range, I mean. And our high cards that are obviously more exclusive to us, we have way more offsuit combos and stuff like that, completely miss this board. So small blind is doing quite good here, therefore he's allowed to donk very often. I mean, we could take out the donks if we think they don't do that. Some people do. And now we see we should bet big. And the East King is actually a very frequent bet. We went smaller, so the sim is going to be already a bit off. And if we face a check raise, now we are supposed to call with Ace King, with a backdoor flash draw. Without one is a bit more tricky. Let's say we call. I know the pot is a bit different right now, but just to illustrate some concepts again. And now on the turn, what you see is happening here is now he's betting really, really infrequently, even though he check raised the flop. And the reason for that is, well, the 3 kind of takes out a lot of his value combos. Right now it's very unlikely for him to have 3s anymore. Actually, it's not a lot of 2 pairs that are taken away when he calls small blind, but he goes quite mergy with his flop check raises. I mean, yeah, quite mergy with the 6s, 7s, 9s, ace 8, and so on. So on the turn, he needs to reframe to using a very polar strategy. And if we look at their draws, except for this open-ender, they're also giving up quite a lot, right? So anyway, if we face a pot-size bet, ace-king now is a pure fold. Even with the flush draw, which is quite mad. I mean, not a pure fold with the flush draw, but folding quite often. So this is what GTO says we should do. So maybe you guys would play this hand against the opponent I'm facing, and you do the play I'm making, and you're gonna be like, oh my god, I punted so bad. But that is because you're trying to apply a GTO output that doesn't really apply in that scenario. So if we really want to use solver in this spot and not common knowledge, what we should do is, first of all, change the small blind range, right? We agreed this is a very wide and aggressive opponent. By very wide, I think he's going to call probably not this worst part of his range, right? Let's say he's not that wide, maybe like this. And he was also 3-betting quite frequently, so let's say he will not have these hands very often. Okay, maybe something like this is a bit more accurate from what I expect this player to do from the small blind against the 2 big blind open. So, my opening range wouldn't be much different. Maybe I would open a bit wider knowing he's in the blind. So we now see small blind is not really allowed to see bet to donk at all. And we should just see bet range. This is basically what you see when the ranges get much wider than they should, and we still have quite a huge range advantage. So already very, very different from what we saw initially, right? We go 40% here. I decided to go for a quarter. Maybe knowing he's that wide, it would have been a bit better to go 40%, but that's not a huge deal. The idea is to understand that in this spot, ace king is definitely a value bet and not anything else. And what we see is now a decent amount of check raising here. What I think will actually happen in practice, if we go to the node lock tab and try to change his strategy a little bit to fit what we think this guy is going to play like. So if we take no made hand and open-ender, gut shot, backdoor flush draw, I think this is probably check raise at a bit of a higher frequency against a small bet on this kind of board. So let's put something like this and see what happens. So we now face a check raise and we see ace king is a pure continue, unless we don't have a backdoor flush draw, because that hand does a bit worse. We see a very, very tiny amount of folding, but also going for the 3-bet from time to time. We just call and the turn is a 3. Now, what's happening here, as I said, especially with this opponent, because he is wider pre-flop, he is going to have 5-3 sometimes. He might even have some 8-3, maybe not. But the idea is a lot of his value range is now reduced. So he should bet smaller and he should be quite careful with his frequencies as well. But what he does is he bets pot. That means we're not really having great odds to call anymore. So you see how rarely he should bet. If we go back, like if he does this, ace king is our hand, ace king of clubs is going to be a pure fold. But knowing he's aggressive and looking at this board, knowing there are so many draws available, and based on my notes, which by the way are very important to take, if you do join our bootcamp or our training programs, we are going to talk about soft skills, which I think are really, really underrated. No one really talks about how to select tables, how to take notes, what things to look at in order to look for in order to form proper reads on opponents. These are the things that are actually going to make your win rate skyrocket, and these are the things that we are going to teach you if you do join our training programs. So, as an example, let's say he doesn't really slow down here, which I think is very characteristic of this type of opponent. So we are filtering now for no made hand, king high, ace high, and then gut shots, open-enders, flash draw, not flash draws, and combo draws. You see there's a lot of these type of hands available here, and let's say he's going to bet this way more often. Not really pure, although I think it's very likely he will bet it pure. I think he might even bet, some no-made hands as well. And let's see, if this is the strategy he plays, what are we supposed to do against it? So now he bets pot, and we see ace-king now becomes a pure shove, what we actually did in practice. And it's very, very different from the original scene where we're just looking at how should cutoff versus small blind play in this spot, like miles apart. And the reason I'm showing you this is because I think this is what you should do when playing poker. You should actually learn some concepts and see why they apply and where. So if I were to think in those terms here, what are the concepts that apply? Well, if someone is over bluffing, but over bluffing with a range that does have equity, what we want to do is try to deny that equity, because yes, we could bluff catch. That is why we do with eights and fives, with hands that are very strong and invulnerable, even kings and aces sometimes. But with these kind of hands that are way ahead of their range, but also are very, very vulnerable. I mean, even if he has 9-7 here and he hits a 7, we're beat. What we want to do is try to deny that equity and get the money in this scenario when the SPR also gets lower. And what might happen is that we might actually get caught by worse hands like a combo draw and so on, but we're also going to get a lot of hands with good equity to fold. And yeah, if you're playing against this type of opponent, which I agree is not very, very common, this is actually what you should do and how you should think about this spot. Right, everyone, so this was everything for today. Let me know if you enjoyed these shorter type of videos. I just wanted to illustrate, some important things about thought process and concepts and how they shift if some conditions are shifted, such as preflop ranges, such as flop strategy, and this is what's mostly going to happen even against regulars. If you get to the river in a solver output, it's very likely not going to be accurate to what's happening in the game. And in our training programs, in our CFP, that's what we're focusing on, how to develop a good and solid thought process that can be flexible to different scenarios that you haven't studied. So if you're curious about that, check the link in the description about our bootcamp, and also join our Discord community to connect with us a bit better. Subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments if you enjoy this type of videos, and if you do, I'll make more of them.